Okay, בשעה טובה. Today we're going to start the second perek Tehillim of the Hallel, which is actually the last perek that we read in the Haggadah, the first portion of the Haggadah. So, in last perek, in the first perek of the Haggadah, of the Hallel, we praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu for his involvement in creation. We speak about the Ashgacha Pratit, how closely he gets to people, how far he is, his kavod, right? We spoke about all this. The second perek talks about his miracles, how he can come and change nature for a specific purpose. And the pasuk says the following: Betzet Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Bet Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Now we will see that there is a duality. There is a repetition happening across the board of this perek. So, Betzet Israel mi Mitzrayim, when Israel came out of Egypt, Bet Yaakov, the house of Yaakov, me'am lo'ez, from the foreign people, right? From the strange speakers. Me'am, from the people, lo'ez, milashon la'az, foreign, from the strange speaking place, meaning from a location that they didn't speak. If you're looking in Tehillim for the Perek Tehillim, is Perek Tehillim Kuf Yud Dalet, 114.
You told me to read it every day for my father.
Yeah, yes. So Betzet Yisrael min Mitzrayim, Bet Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Hayta Yehuda. Yehuda was the Kodsho. Yehuda was for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his holiness. Israel was for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mamshelotav, his dominion, his way of controlling. That's how he showed that he is present and he is ruling. Now, as you see, we have Israel, Bet Yaakov. We have Yehuda, Israel. Hayam ra'a vayanos. The sea saw something, saw the miracles. And we're talking here about Kriyat Yam Suf. The Yam Suf saw something, vayanos, and she ran away. Hayarden isov le'achor, and the Yarden, the Jordan, the sea of the Jordan, isov le'achor, ran backwards. So again, we have the Yam and we have the Yarden. The mountains danced like the rams, Gevarot, Kivnetzon, and the hills like sheep. Again, we see that we have mountains and we have hills. And now, after that statement, David HaMelech says, "Ma lecha yam kitanus." You see, why are you running away? Hayarden tisov le'achor. You, the Jordan, why are you stepping back, running back? And you, mountains, why are you dancing like rams? Give out kivnetzor, and you hills like sheep. The answer is milifne adon holi aretz, because you see in front of you the master that makes the entire earth shake. And who is that? Milifne Eloah Yaakov. You're doing all this. You're running away. You're shaking because you see the God of Yaakov. The one that turns the rock into a fountain of water, the pool of water. Halamish. And the halamish is a rock that's extremely condensed, very dense, very, very strong, stronger than the two, into a fountain of water. So here the David HaMelech, here the Tehillim, is focusing on what? Is focusing of not only the Ashgaha, but an involvement that turns the rules of nature into miracles, right? Now, one of the obvious question is, since when you speak to domain, you speak to dead things that don't have life, right? David HaMelech, he's talking to the rock, he's talking to the hill, he's talking to the Yam, to the sea, he's talking to the Jordan River, right? And there's an answer, right? So that obviously there's two ways. The simple pshat is what? And we will see, it's a form of speech that he's talking to himself and he's presuming and projecting what they would answer. And the other pshat is he's talking to the essence of what keeps them real and creative. And this is what those malachim answer to him. The malach in charge of the sea, the malach in charge of the mountains. That's their answer. Meaning, this is what nature responds. This is not just a philosophical thought. This is mamash what the nature will respond or did respond. Now, if we dive into the psukim, we see something phenomenal. Obviously, we're learning the pirush of the Maharal. Yeah. We know that Am Yisrael has two names. You have the name of Bet Yaakov, and you have the name of Israel. Bet Yaakov is the nation. When we refer to Am Yisrael as Bet Yaakov, we're referring to a nation like every other nation. When we talk about Israel, we talk about the wife of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We talk about the protégé of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we talk about Yehuda, we talk about kingdom, right? Yehuda was awarded the title, the keter, the crown of the king. And we know that the true definition of malchut, of a king, is what was given to Yehuda, right? If we're looking for the true lineage of royalty, it's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave himself, because he's the true king, Melech Malchei HaMelachim, the king of all kings. So when we address the concept of Yehuda, we address the revelation of the Malchut Hashem, the kingdom, the royalty of Hashem in humanity. Yes.
You said it has two names, and now we have three.
No, I'm saying. Am Israel has two names, Bet Yaakov and Israel. But when we refer to Yehuda, Yehuda represents the Malchut in humanity, not a name of, not a title of Am Israel. I'm going through the names or through the terms that the Tehillim is using to identify Am Israel, right? So we have Israel, we have Yehuda, and we have Bet Yaakov. Now, Yehuda is not a name of Israel. It's referring to Malchut, to the royalty that HaKadosh Baruch Hu shared with humanity. Okay. So, Betzet Yisrael miMitzrayim Bet Yaakov me'am Loez, says the Maharal, this is referring obviously to Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? We go out of Egypt. But the freedom of Egypt happened in two dimensions. The Israel came out of Egypt, meaning the Tzura, the Ruhaniyut, the spirituality, the mind, the freedom of mind, the freedom of the Neshama got out of Egypt, and Bet Yaakov, and the body with everything that it has in it, Me'am Lo'ez, from its strange language, from a foreign country. We got out with the name of Yaakov as a nation, physically, but we also got out with the neshama, Israel. הייתה יהודה לקודשו. Now, says the Maharal, why does it say הייתה יהודה לקודשו? הייתה is feminine. Haya is masculine. Yehuda is masculine. So why do we say הייתה יהודה לקודשו? Yehuda, she was his Kedusha. It should be Yehuda, he was, right? Haya Yehuda. So he says, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu showers or channels his essence, which essentially is royalty, into Yehuda. So Yehuda is the receiver. It's like the Kala. The woman receives from her husband. Yehuda receives the Malchut from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this is what is hinted in the word Hayita. Yehuda became a receiver, lekodsho, in order to sanctify the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because Yehuda, the Malchut Yehuda, to be a melech, says the Maharal, is to be kadosh. A person that is holy is a person that's carrying the royalty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is a person that is a kadosh, a royal person? Is a person doesn't mingle with who is not in the same level. When you don't mingle, right? A king cannot go, and the prince cannot go and start walking the markets with mundane people. He's not going to go to a pub and drink with the people of the street. So says the Maharal, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho. If you want to show royalty, be kadosh. Sanctify yourself. Deprive yourself from the mundane desires. Do not be careful with the way you speak. Kings speak, the royalty speak a certain way, eat a certain way, behaves a certain way, mingles with certain type of people. Israel mamshelotav. And when Am Yisrael follow the rules, mitzvot ta'aseh, mitzvot lo ta'aseh, it shows to the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a system into place. So the freedom of Egypt is a freedom of Kedusha. It's a freedom of mitzvot. And it's a freedom of royalty. Hayam Ra'ah, this is the first portion. So what do we identify here? We identify essentially that we represent the Kedusha of Hashem. We represent his Kedusha, his royalty. We represent his essence. And when you do that, when you are Kadosh, when you are Kol Kulcha, all of you, filled in with the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the royalty of Hashem, well, there is a phenomenon that happens in creation. Hayam Ra'ah Bayanos. When the sea sees you, it runs away. Hayarden and the Jordan, now Yisov Le'achor runs back. The Pshat, here the Yam is referring to Yam Suf, Yarden is referring to Yehoshua Binun when he crossed the Yarden. Another pshat is that we know that when the Yam Suf split, all the seas split with it, right? So or it's referring, Pshat, two events. One event, Yetziat Mitzrayim, another event, Knisa of Yehoshua Eretz Israel. Or it represents one event, Kriyat Yam Suf, and referring that not only the Yam Suf split, but all the waters that split. Okay. Says the Maharal, how come the Midbar didn't split? We went into Egypt. Says the Maharal, how come the sand didn't open? We see water splitting. So what's the difference between water splitting or sand splitting? It should have opened, and we have a beautiful road, all paved. Latest technology. Good question. It's a good question. Says the Maharal, there's a fundamental difference. Yam, the sea, the water, is filled with life. If you take a cup of water before it's distilled and before it's clean, blah 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 blah. If you take natural water and you start diving into it, you will find in it infinite life, from microscopic to big. Water is chomri. It has gashmiut to it. It has life to it. It has life to it. You go to the desert is dead. There's nothing in the desert. So water represents chomiyut, represents physicality. Since there is so much of it, and by the way, there's more life in the oceans than there are on the planet, on Earth, just so you know. The kingdom of the sea is much richer in life than the land kingdom. But the Midbar, and Bodava Humri, there's nothing to it. There's no substance to it. There's no life to it. Of course, you're going to see a snake or scorpion or something like that. But life cannot exist there. You don't see trees. You don't see. It's very, very. He says the Maharal, when something that is alive, that has two legs to stand on and think that it's independent, the sea, life, when it sees Kedusha, when it sees true Kedusha, it runs away. It cannot coexist with the Emet. The Kedusha is Emet. Life, by definition, is an opportunity to think that you stand on your two legs and you're independent in an ecosystem. So life, water cannot accept the Kedusha. Hayam Ra'a Vayanos. It ran away. Hayarden, same thing. Isov le'acho.
Shouldn't life embrace Kedusha and not run away?
Yes, that's if you have your neshama, right?
Yes.
That's if you have your neshama. But if you don't, if it's pure nature,
it's the body. The body wants to choke the neshama.
Exactly. Therefore, says the Maharal, when Am Yisrael were in front of water, or they were in front, we will see, of mountains and hills, nature cannot coexist and stay the same in front of the Kedusha. But in the desert, where there is no sign of life, it's a clean canvas. The Torah resides, is given. Am Yisrael will be there 40 years, no problem, because it's a canvas, it's a platform that is ready to accept the Kedusha. Says the Maharal, when you want to create coexistence with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you cannot coexist. But if you are a platform that is ready to absorb everything and not make a deal with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when the Kedusha resides. When you absorb, the more you develop Kedusha, and the more that Kedusha repulses this optical illusion that you are independent and a standalone in that creation. So, what's the formula? The more you realize, the less you are independent, and the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care. The more you are independent, and the less you can coexist with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation, Kedusha. Now, nobody's saying, I'm not going to do nothing, and it's up to you. Here we're talking about the coexistence between nature, homeriyut, physicality, right, versus spirituality versus Kedusha. The mountains shook, right? Danced like the rams, gave out kivnetzon, and the hills like sheeps. So says the Maharal, why did David HaMelech, why did the Tehillim choose specifically mountains, rocks, and water? He says these are the two elements that don't have any structure in creation.
What does it mean, structure?
There's no structure to it. There's structure to water.
But how do you know it's the only two things? I don't know.
Huh? No.
No.
We're not going into microcosm.
Okay.
In macro, give me something else that doesn't have structure. Trees have structure. Animals have structure. What doesn't have structure if it's not the mountains, which is random, and water?
Earth. Adam.
Is this earth? Yes, but earth and very good. Earth and mountains. Mountains are made of earth, and that's and bravo. I mean, the Maharal himself brings the midrash that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took dust, earth, from what that was under his kisei hakavod, whatever that means, under his throne, and he sparkled the planet, and that's what created land. Yes, this is what we're referring to. He says here we face two elements, one that is liquid and doesn't have a shape, and the other one that is solid and doesn't change shape. You have absolute rigidity and absolute agility. Both of them cannot stand in front of the Kedusha. You can have a person that is always like slippery, people, they tell you something, they change all the time. Everything you say, there's something else. Boom, and you're like, I can't get a hold of the guy. He's too slippery. We know a lot of people like that, right? When they stand in front of Kedusha, they cannot. And if the guy is stubborn like a rock, he's not moving, you can't budge the guy. Also, in front of Kedusha, it doesn't stand. I said in last week's parasha, we know we read the famous Maaseh of Moshe Rabbeinu. He hit the rock twice, Hashem told him, speak to the rock. So there's a lot of Pirushim, the Rambam, the Ramban, the Rabbeinu Hananel, the Ibn Ezra. The Ramban makes a summary of most of them. And they all come with a Pirush, right? So I said the Pirush, the following. Based on one question, and it's very apropos to what we're learning right now. ודיברתם אל הסלע. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you will speak, take your mate, and you will speak. קח את המטה, כן? ודיברתם אל הסלע, and you will speak to the stone. And what does Moshe do? He hits the stone. So the obvious question is, what's going on here? You don't follow the simple procedure. There's a protocol. He says, speak to the stone, and you hit the stone. What happened to Moshe? What happened to Moshe? So the Ibn Ezra wants to say that he was distracted. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rambam says because he was upset. To each their own. Okay. So what he said is the following. And it's based on Ma'amari Chazal. It says that the language to speak has many, many forms. You have the language of humans. You have the language of animals. You have the language of the trees, of vegetation. Lashon Dekalim, right? Lashon Dekalim. And you have also the Lashon of the Domem, the Lashon of the rocks. How does rock speak? You bring them together and you make a noise, right? Domem, something that is steady, that doesn't have life, you bring it together and it speaks. You scrap it together and it creates a spark. Trees have their own lashon, have their own ways of talking. Animals, the same thing. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, take your stick and you will speak to the Selah, you will speak the lashon, speak the language of the stone. And what is the language of the stone? To bring two things together. You tell me to take the stick and you tell me to speak to the stone, so I have to bring the stick and the stone together. That was the understanding of Moshe Rabbeinu when Hashem tells him, "V'dibartem." Now, the other question is, okay, you didn't do Kiddush Hashem. Hashem tells them, therefore you will not go to Eretz Yisrael. Is there a difference if you hit the stone and you speak to the stone and there's water coming out? It's a miracle. It's a miracle in itself. So we said the following. We said each physical thing in creation has a speech, like we just said, right? Domem has a speech, vegetation has a speech, animal kingdom has a speech, humans have speech, and then you have Dvar Hashem, and then you have the speech of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you have when you have the neshama speaking, v'dibartem el hasela, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you will speak Dvar Hashem to the stone, and the stone will respond to you. The fact that you take a stick and you hit it on the rock and they speak together, great, but that's not the super miracle. This is domem, this is physicality speaking to each other. But if you have Dvar Hashem talking, the Dvar Hashem can talk to any aspect, to any essence in creation, even the rock, and the rock will answer. This is the message. Kedusha, when you have Kedusha and you speak, it's not me speaking. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu residing in me speaking. And in front of that, nothing can stand. No one can stand. This is the message of the Maharal. And he says, the reason that we had so much kedusha when we left Egypt is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself took us out of Egypt. So by taking us out of Egypt, he infused out of his own essence. So when we stood in front of the sea cannot stand, opens. The mountains around us all shaking, the hills all trembling. Says the Maharal, here we see the power of being kadosh. Not only that you represent HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he resides in you, but nothing and no one can stand before you. And that's the question. You, the sea, why are you fleeting? And you, the Yarden, why are you running away? And you mountains, why are you shaking and dancing like the rams? And you hills, why are you shaking like sheep? You know why? You're reacting because you see the master that makes the world tremble. Milifnei Eloah Yaakov, and who is that? The God of Yaakov. You're trembling, you're reacting to Elokei Yaakov. Now, it's not Elokei Israel, it's Elokei Yaakov. Ma Kavana says the Maharal, when we got out of Egypt and we were infused from that Kedusha, we didn't leave the Kedusha on a Neshama level. We brought it down, like we learned in Shir HaShirim, we brought it down to the level of Yaakov. And that's when everything started to move in nature. Because if you leave the Kedusha in the world of spirituality, then okay, so it exists in the world of spirituality, but it does not impact the world of physicality. It's only once you infuse your world of physicality with your spirituality that spirituality has an impact on the world of physicality. That's Milifnei Elohei Yaakov. Now, what's very interesting is the word Holi. Milifnei Adon Holi Aretz. Holi means to tremble. But it also comes from the word Mahol. Mahol, and Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'asot Mahol HaTzadikim. Mahol, it means to dance. Is when you have people making a circle and dancing in circle. And it also means to be yotzer, to create. So it's interesting. We have the definition of creation. We have a definition that means to fear, to tremble. And we have a definition of holi that means mahor, that means to dance. So it's opposites, right? Dancing and trembling. So the pshat, it says in Tehillim, in Gilu bir'ada, you have to be happy with fear by trembling. The pshat is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, a source of awe and fear, because we fear, we're in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness, but we're also dancing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we understand, we're in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we understand how nature behaves with us and how we behave with nature, then we dance with nature. We don't have to be afraid of nature. And this is the Yitzur, this is the creation. Milifnei Adon Huli Aretz, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates and gives the ability or to fear nature, to fear time, to fear animals, to fear the unknown or to dance with it. The absolute contradiction, he turns a rock into a pool of water, a very solid rock into a fountain of water. He takes solid, turn it into liquid, liquid, turn it into solid. And this is exactly the outcome of the Kedusha. Nothing stands, not the solid and not the liquid, in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of the Kedusha, in front of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the moment he took us out of Egypt. Here, and with this Tehillim, with this Perek Tehillim, we conclude the Magi, right? The Haggadah, before we finish the Hallel after the meal. We realize what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. A weapon that is called Kedusha, that is called Neshama, that can break through anything. We become limitless. Right? How did we start? This is what we started the Leila Seder. That's why we start. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us that level. He gave it to us. So if we,
But the neshama was inside us before going out of Egypt.
Yes. But he activated it. He supercharged it. Before you had individuality, right? He took us out as a people and he connected the body and the soul together, infused them and synchronized them. And now made us Am Segula. He made us his people. So you can have a neshama, right? But there's a difference between having a neshama and HaKadosh Baruch Hu residing in your neshama.
In Shavuot.
I'm sorry?
When he gave us the Torah.
No. Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay. Yetziat Mitzrayim. From the moment we exiled Egypt,
okay.
This is what the Tehillim is telling us. This is what we got. This is what it was consolidated as a people, you're right, like the Ramban says. When we received the Torah, we got out of Egypt in order to receive the Torah.
No, it's a process.
Torah, exactly, it's a process. Right now, the Tehillim is expressing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did on our behalf that ended up becoming ours when we received the Torah.
Okay.
So, just to finish, and this is related to the Haggadah, right? So after we finish the second perek, Kuf Yud Dalet, we make a beracha. Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher ge'alanu. He saved us. V'ge'al et avotenu, and he saved our forefathers from Egypt. And he brought us to here. Blessed you are to eat from matzah, marom. Ken Hashem Elokeinu, and when we ask Hashem, please Hashem, bring us to more holidays. In peace, semechim, happy bebinyan eirach, with the reconstruction of the Bet HaMikdash, serving you in the Bet HaMikdash, and let us eat. V'nochal sham min hazevachim min hapesachim. We will eat zvachim and pesachim. Zvachim is korban hagiga. Pesachim is korban pesach. Asher yagia daman al kirchav leratzon, and we'll serve you and throw the blood on the wall. V'nodeh lecha shir hadash. And we will thank you for the absolute redemption of the Geulah. Baruch Ata Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that saved us that saved us, Israel. Ga'al Israel, who saved us from in the past. Here, so just so you know, there is a mahloket between Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. If you look at the structure of the beracha, we start with Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher ge'alanu ve'ga'al et avotenu. That's in the Haggadah. And we finish the beracha, Baruch Ata Hashem Ga'al Israel. Okay. Rabbi Tarfon says no. It's a small bracha. You share Baruch Ata Hashem asher ge'alanu ve'ga'al et avotenu miMitzrayim. That's it. You don't finish with another bracha of Baruch Ata Hashem Ga'al Israel. Rabbi Akiva says no. You have to make the long beracha. You have to start with Baruch and finish with Baruch. For example, when we say Baruch She'amar ve'haya olam, we start with Baruch and we finish with Baruch. Right? Yotzer HaMeorot, we start Arbit. Baruch Ata Hashem. Amar Aravi, Baruch. Right? So he says, when you make one bracha, you have to know. There's a klal. When you make one bracha, the birkat haroda'ah. You're blessing HaKadosh Baruch Hu and praising Him when there's only one Baruch. When you make a bracha where you have two Baruch, meaning it starts with Baruch and it finishes with Baruch, it's bakasha. You're asking Him for something. Ritzui. You want Him to have more ratzon, to have more will and desire towards you. So what do? Chachamim decided that we will say both nuschaot. We will say the nusach. We will say what Rabbi Tarfon said, but in a structure of beracha that Rabbi Akiva had. So we start with Baruch and we finish it with Baruch in our Haggadah, which goes along with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So when we say that Baruch, we're asking HaKadosh Baruch. We're asking Him. We tell Him, please bring us to the Geulah Shelema. Now, what's interesting, if you look at the formula, the words, we say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Asher Ge'alanu, bless you Hashem, who saved us, Ve'ga'al et avotenu miMitzrayim, and saved our forefathers from Egypt. It should be the other way around, right? First, He saved our forefathers from Egypt, and then he said, and along that He also saved us. Now, if you look at the praising that we say right before the Hallel, לפיכך אנחנו חייבים להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, right before the Hallel. למי שעשה לאבותינו ולנו. There we say לאבותינו and then we say לנו. But here we say לנו, גאלנו וגאל אבותינו. So the pshat is the following. Chachamim come to teach us that when you address the Yetziat Mitzrayim, Vadai, it starts in terms of historic events. It starts with our ancestors. But when you praise for the redemption, who is closer to the final redemption? Us. So you cannot base the final redemption by starting backwards. So first you acknowledge that you are part of the redemption, and only then you can say, and it started then. So in that beracha, we bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let that freedom that I just praised you for in the Hallel be part of my redemption. I need to be free. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I need to be Kadosh. I need to be with you. I need to serve you. This is the peak of the Haggadah. Baruch Ata Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, I bless you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God that saved Israel. Once again, we're just saying thank you for taking us, for saving us and saving our forefathers. But when we make the bracha, thanking for saving us in the past, we should be saying Baruch Ata Hashem Goel Israel. We should say thank you for saving us now. The pshat is that being free and being saved is not about me. It's not about a generation. It's not about a specific time. It's a process. We've been saved since then. The Geula is not starting with me. The Geula is a process that has started for a very long time. So on one end, I acknowledge now that I'm closer to the Geula, and I'm begging HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give me all that Kedusha, all that power, so that I can continue leading the Geula. But the Geula didn't start with me. It's not about me. It's about the process since Yetziat Mitzrayim. Baruch Ata Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. And we finish with Baruch Ata Hashem Borei Peri HaGefen. Right? This is the second cup of wine that we drink to conclude the praising, the shvach, right, of the Magid, of the Haggadah, and then start the next, the next step is Rohza, which we will discuss. We will go back to Bli Neder after we finish the Hallel. Tov.
Beautiful.